Waiting for Justino. Is he coming on? Vamos, vamos. Okay.
Hey.
Hey.
Yes, we're doing this.
We're so doing this. I'm so glad that that we did this. That we took some time. Obviously, today we're there's the Supreme Court hearing. They're hearing oral arguments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Support and against DACA or the Trump's administration's termination of DACA, which won't be decided today. They're just hearing some arguments. Yeah. Do you want to give us a quick overview? Do you think we have enough people tuned in, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's a good number. And the great thing about it is it'll be saved for 24 hours. Okay. So people can, come back and then later watch it.
Wonderful.
And then if you don't mind, I think what I might do is record the screen later on, so that way we can share it in other ways.
Perfect.
Again, thank you for, inviting me. For those of you that don't know me, which is I would say a vast majority of you, my name is Justino Mora. I am an immigrant rights activist, a DACA recipient, and I've been involved in this fight for more than 10 years. So this is something that is really personal. I have people, have family members who are also directly affected. So the fight for DACA is not only about DACA recipients, many of them who were very young when they came to the US, but it's also about fighting for the rest of the other immigrants, people who are protected by TPS, the children at the border who have been put in cages, people who don't have any kind of documentation, people who are just undocumented and don't have the means to adjust their status. This is for the 11 million undocumented immigrants. So whatever the Supreme Court decides to do in the coming months, it's about deciding also the fate of the 11 million undocumented immigrants, and also I would say about deciding, the fate of this democracy as well, because it's also about protecting the most vulnerable. So with that said, today's hearing, it's about the legality of the Trump's administration decision to terminate DACA. So back in September 5th, 2017, the Trump administration came out and said, oh, we're terminating DACA. And then what many people did, and immigrant rights activists and organizations decided to do, they decided to sue the Trump administration. And then they decided to sue the Trump administration based on their arguments to terminate DACA. So today, the oral arguments that took place revolve around the decision of the Trump administration to end it. So that's kind of like the good thing. It's not about the constitutionality of DACA, but it's about the reason why the Trump administration decided to, quote unquote, end it.
Right.
And then the other thing to also be clear, there's a lot of confusion, which you mentioned, Diane, at the beginning, is a decision won't be made today. A decision will be made in the coming months between, January 2020 and June 2020. It's really hard to know when that decision will take place.
Right. As we know, the Trump administration's attack on DACA is basically just a continuation of their racist agenda and what we've seen throughout his entire presidency.
Absolutely.
And it's basically, this is just about inflicting more pain on the immigrant community, about picking a scapegoat and hurting the most vulnerable. And we've seen that. We've seen that throughout history, but we're definitely seeing it now with the separation of families at the border. And of course, this awful attack on DACA recipients who are filled with mostly students and obviously kids who came here people who were brought over here when they were kids, who had absolutely no say on being here.
Yeah, and yes, so actually a really cool statistic is the average age of a DACA recipient when they came to the US is 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was 11 when I came to the US. So many people, most DACA recipients have, grown up and seen everything. And, being a DACA recipient means the following. We have to apply for DACA every 2 years. We have to pay the government $495. We have to go through this, really extensive background check. So today, this morning, Trump actually tweeted that he said, oh, you know, DACA recipients are criminals, quote unquote.
Wow.
And it's really, ironic because his administration are the criminals. They are the ones who on a day-to-day basis are breaking the law. And DACA recipients, we have to go through this extensive background check to be able to, you know, have eligibility to apply for DACA. And is this continuation of every 2 years we have to apply, and that's one thing that I want to tell DACA recipients watching this video, and, you know, family members of DACA recipients, which is if your DACA you know, is up for renewal, or if it expired or got terminated in the past, for you all to apply as soon as possible. Because we only have a very short window of time. We don't know what might happen in the next couple of months, but it's better to reapply for DACA. And for those whose DACA expired or got terminated, you know, people are suggesting, you know, immigrant rights organizations and immigration attorneys are saying, you know, for them to go to an attorney or to a legal representative for them to get more help and advice. And one thing that I do want to say is a disclaimer: I'm not an immigration attorney. This is not immigration legal advice what Diane and I are talking about, but it's just things, best things, you know, that immigrant rights organizations and immigration attorneys are recommending for DACA recipients to do.
Yeah, I know. I like during the time that you know, Trump's the administration talked about rescinding DACA. I heard a lot of rumors of saying, you know what, at this time you shouldn't apply. And I think that a lot of people have sort of shied away from applying because obviously they don't want to be flagged and separated from their families. But you're saying you think it's a, I mean, in your experience, it's a good idea to apply now. To reapply. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, so it's a good idea to apply, reapply. If, you know, the best case scenario in this case is we submit our renewal application, it goes through the system, and we get approved in time, right? So for those DACA recipients watching the video and their DACA expires in 2020, they should absolutely consider reapplying. And that's actually one thing that I'm going to be doing this week. I'm going to be submitting my renewal application this week because my DACA expires in April 2020. And one other thing that we know that has been happening in the last couple of months is USCIS has been taking more time to process applications and to approve them. And that has to do with a lot of reasons, but one of those big reasons is the fact that the Trump administration is purposely delaying the process or just making the process more difficult.
Sure.
And actually one of those things is last week on Friday, you know, from all days, they do this every Friday. They made the announcement that they're actually considering in raising the fees for many different application, you know, immigration application processes.
Right.
And one of those is DACA, and they're considering in raising the fees by a significant amount. So that is, you know, another reason for DACA recipients to consider, you know, submitting the renewal application sometime soon, definitely this year.
Before fees go up.
Well, that's still kind of like up in the air. They said that they're going to be asking people for public comment, but my feeling is, given the history of this administration, their track record of increasing, you know, the fees and raising the obstacles, is I'm pretty confident that they might raise the fees, but we have to fight back.
Okay. And what are we going to hear today? So when is the I'm you guys, I'm not an expert in this. I mean, I as you guys have seen me on this topic, I share my story and I try to support people that are actually out there doing the work. I like to consider myself as a representative of my community as best I can, and that's why I hook up with people with like Justino who are in this every day, and this is what we should do. We should look to each other to gather the resources that we need, and that's what we're doing now. So what
absolutely
what are the type of things that we're going to be hearing at the hearing?
Yes, so the hearing is I have a couple of friends currently in DC. You know, some of them actually were able to go inside of the Supreme Court and actually be there for the fight, for the attorneys to tell the Supreme Courts about to basically fight for DACA.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the whole thing, the whole hearing is not televised. The audio is recorded, and then it'll be released later on.
Right.
So I'm gonna I don't know exactly what they talked about today, but I'm gonna be asking some of my friends who were able to be part of the hearing today to let me know what happened. And another thing to remember as well when it comes to this hearing is, everything that's at stake. When we think about, the possibility of this being taken away in the near future, and people losing their status and families becoming subject to deportation, people losing their jobs, their means to provide for their own families, and their means to, to just support even their own community members.
Yeah. Let's say what can we expect? We've obviously seen an overwhelming support for DACA. And that's why we've seen such a fight, and that's why it's been hard for the administration really to take this away. But what can we see if what can be expected if DACA is rescinded? Really?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Given the new Supreme Court's approval, Supreme Court Judge Kavanaugh, who has a track history of being a sexist, racist, so I want to be optimistic, right, about the possibility, about the fight. So looking at the legal background and basically just looking at the proof and at the evidence that we have at hand, looking at the support that we have on the table and everything that we have in benefit of DACA. The conclusion is the Supreme Court should rule that the Trump administration, what they did in September 5th, 2017, their decision to rescind DACA was illegal. And that should protect DACA. That should be, the common sense approach, because that's the evidence suggests and supports DACA. But given the judges who sits currently in the court, it's really hard to know. So that is the reason why there's many, for instance, like the NILC and the ILRC, which are big immigrant rights organizations here in the U.S. They have proposed that there might be three different scenarios. Three potential outcomes. One of them is that Supreme Court says, well, the Trump administration was, their argument for terminating DACA is legal. They should proceed however they want. And that will give the green light to the Trump administration to actually terminate the program and do whatever they want with it. The other outcome is the Supreme Court could say, well, the Trump administration, their decision to terminate DACA is actually illegal. So that decision might buy us time, and it might actually also put in place the other part of DACA that was taken away, and that is if people never apply for DACA, they cannot submit a DACA application. So first-time applicants at the current moment, they're not being accepted. So if the Supreme Court, so if the Supreme Court says the Trump administration, their argument is completely illegal, is not valid, then that will allow for new applications to be processed. And in addition to that, also potentially for something known as advanced parole to also be put back into place. And advanced parole allows DACA recipients to be able to apply for a travel permit to be able to travel outside of the U.S. And at the current moment, that was also taken away. So advanced parole applications at the current moment are not being processed, and they're being rejected by the Trump administration.
Okay. So basically, if we get some sort of whatever we hear today, that obviously this decision won't be now, but it will affect the decision between January and June 2020.
Yes. Correct.
So I guess we should be in tune to that.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, what are the things that from now until then, I would assume that a lot of people who have a concern with DACA being taken away should participate as much as they can. I mean, obviously, this is a big, important election year. A lot of decisions are being made, and all of us, we're all being affected. So we should. What are some of the ways that people who are interested can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, there's many marches and rallies happening all over the U.S. And there's a couple of, they should follow the hashtags DACA. Actually, DACA is trending at a global level, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So just click on that hashtag, and I'm sure they'll be able to see actions and rallies taking place in their local communities. Here in LA, for those that live here in LA, there's two rallies taking place in downtown LA. One which just began minutes ago at 10 a.m.
Yes.
And also from 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. there's going to be protests and demonstrations happening here in LA and also all over the U.S. Other ways to support DACA recipients and just in general the immigrant community is to get involved with local immigrant rights organizations. It's really hard to mention all of them, but I would suggest going to Google and searching for immigrant rights organizations in their local communities. Some of them that come to mind are Al Otro Lado and Al Otro Lado. They do amazing work representing refugees and people applying for asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border in Tijuana and San Diego. Another one is Raíces. When it comes to resources, the ones that come to mind are NILC, the National Immigrant Law Center, and also the ILRC, the Immigrant
Legal Resource Center.
Immigrant Legal Resource, And they create, they have graphics that we ended up sharing. I ended up sharing some of them last night, and I'm going to be sharing more today about what the Supreme Court hearing is all about, and some also advice for DACA recipients.
Wonderful.
For them to follow on this issue.
Yeah, you guys, I'm also going to be posting information on DACA. I'm basically going to repost everything Justino does because you're such a great mind. Thank you so much for
thank you.
Always being on top of business and being educated, because I think that's like one of the most important things that we fail to realize in our community is that, yes, they may try to take our rights away, and they will put roadblocks on top of roadblocks for us and for our communities. However, they can't take our knowledge, our intellectual knowledge. So that's on us to make sure that we're staying on task and that we're educating ourselves on what's going on, so that when it's time to really inform our community on how to act, we're right there with them and in supporting the people who are doing the work on the ground.
Absolutely.
So stay informed, stay updated on everything that's going on. Follow Justino to know what's going on with DACA. And like I said, I'm going to be posting some information on that as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Justino?
No, I just want to say abolish ICE, prosecute ICE, and impeach Trump.
All of that. You guys, I know this seems like just so difficult to do because evil has risen to like at an all new height, but we have to stick together and be united, stay informed, and just remember to love each other and know that we're all in this together. And it does affect you whether you like it or not, and whether you think it doesn't. It does. So anyway, let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I actually I never do this, and I love doing this with you, and let's continue informing our people on what's going on. All right,
thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye everyone.
Gracias. Ciao.
Ciao.